green design, sustainable living and the circular economy. So I have 5 esteemed speakers today on the panel, and I'll introduce each of them to you. First up we have Marc Noyce, the Chief Executive Officer at Biofilta. Jane Parker, who is renowned for her work with Country Road and also the Head of Fashion and Costume Making at LCI Melbourne, the Design Arts School. We also have Brigitte Heller, who is an esteemed artist, a sculptor. Kelly Wellington, an architect and senior associate at Gray Puxent. And of course Wayne Rankin, a designer and co-founder of the Australian Graphic Design Association. Okay. So to start us off, I'll introduce you all to Marc. So I've got a bit of background noise there. All right. So, Marc Noyce is the Chief Executive Officer at Biofilta. Biofilta works to transform cities into catchments and food bowls by implementing a suite of innovative measures from sustainable urban farms to stormwater treatment and harvesting projects. Marc brings over 20 years of experience, having held senior positions at Melbourne Water, the Department of Sustainability and Environment, and global infrastructure, environmental and social development firm Cardno. Biofilta is a partner at the Melbourne Skyfarm project in collaboration with 2 other sustainability companies. The aim of the initiative is to transform a 2,000 square metre rooftop car park into an urban farm and environmental oasis in the heart of Melbourne. So please welcome Marc Noyce.
Good morning everybody, how are we going? Good. Who likes growing food at home? That's actually about right. 52% of Australians grow food of some sort at home. So about half of you put your hand up, which is pretty cool. Biofilta is really about the whole circular economy, and it was a fantastic opportunity to talk about some of those things on a city view, on a local community view, and also at the household level too. So I'd like to go through and just provoke some thought about how each one of us and as a society how we can contribute to that. So what is circular living? Everyone's got their own definition about circular living, but for us it's about looking at our water cycle and our nutrient cycle in our food systems. We think that cities really need to capture the water. We've got so much wasted runoff, and here in Melbourne it's almost 1 for 1. So as much drinking water that we consume is how much rainwater falls off our streets and our roof areas and out to our bay. Our Port Phillip Bay is like a big fishbowl with a little tiny hole in it. It takes on average 1 year for 1 piece of water to come out of our bay once it goes in. So it's like if you have a fishbowl at home and you feed your fish too much, you put too much nutrient in there, it can't get out and it goes anaerobic and smelly. We've got our Port Phillip Bay, which is a very large fishbowl, doing the same thing. So we need to stop the nutrients from getting into our bay, otherwise it turns eutrophic. We believe that we can reuse a lot more of our water in our urban landscape, and we'll show you how that's done on a fairly large scale. We believe that our cities, to be circular, really need to help grow more of your own food at home and to stop this one-way traffic with all our nutrients going in, imported, out, and then out to the environment. We need to get that into a more circular economy. So I'll start by looking at how to transform our cities and what role we're trying to play in transforming our cities into catchments. Here's a graphic of what that might look like in an urban environment where we capture our roof water and our stormwater from our cities, our hardscapes, our roads, and we take out those pollutants. So next time you see someone throw a cigarette butt on the ground, well, that gets washed away down our drains and somebody's got to collect it, or it ends up in our big fishbowl, our Port Phillip Bay. So we capture that, we take out the sediment, and then we capture the water when it occurs, because we get this very boom or bust rainfall pattern. So we need to grab that rainfall when it happens in large structures, and we do that with large underground tanks. We then filter that through a vegetated sand filter at the surface, and then we reuse that water for our irrigation of our parks and gardens. But how does that look? How do you visualise that? Well, if you go to Fitzroy Gardens, you'll see a system that's right next to Captain Cook's cottage. There's a cafe on the side, and if anyone's been to this, you would have walked past a 4 million litre underground collection system that is processing 70 million litres worth of water per annum to meet 60% of Fitzroy Gardens' water demand at less than the cost of potable water. So cities can harness stormwater and have a really big impact on sustainability, so that we don't have to take our drinking water supplies to keep our heritage listed parks and gardens alive. So for $5 million, the City of Melbourne produces 70 million litres worth of water out of a system that we've designed and help implement in the city. It pays back itself within 20 years for something that's going to be there effectively forever, and we have a priceless, sustainable city garden. But how do we then turn ourselves into urban farms? How do we grow more in less space? Why would we need to grow more in less space? Well, by 2050, which most of us will still be here then, I hope, we will import more than 80% of our food outside 100 kilometres of where we're sitting right now. Does that shock anybody? Does that alarm anybody? Do you think, wow, we're going to have price hikes and we're going to have food shocks potentially? You should be worried about that, because we are paving over some of our most fertile land with this expansion of urban development. And so our food bowls are being built over, so we have to import more food from a lot further out, and the price of living goes up. We really need to grow more in less space. We need to make it easy for people to grow. We need to close our nutrient loops by composting, using those nutrients, connecting with our food and our food cycle. And this is how we do it. We can do it vertically. We can do it horizontally. Yeah, this is one in Leopold. Within 3 months, they're growing great food at home. We can advance the wicking garden bed, which is, you'll see them on display out here next to the tiny house, the RACV tiny house, where we have wicking beds that are connected and modular and just look after the plants all by themselves for weeks at a time. You can go away on holidays and you come back and your plants are happy to see you when you come back. No more standing out there with the hose. So re-engineering food growing systems is something that we do, and we do this for just about any scale. We're working in remote locations where salt water comes out the ground, so urban agriculture is basically impossible. With different technology, you can utilise local inputs, you can capture what little resources you have, keep it contained, and then grow great food. Closing the nutrient loop, here's Tuvalu, which is 1,000 kilometres north of Fiji. It's a little atoll nation, and its elevation is 1.8 metres above sea level. So in a king tide, salt water literally comes out the ground. Composting is a little bit ad hoc at the moment, and this is a resource that needs to be closing the loop in terms of their circular economy. And it's really, really important when you live on a very small atoll. We live on a very large island. They live on a very small one, and they can do it at this scale. So we've implemented through our federal government 400 of these growing systems. We're producing lots and lots of food where you wouldn't believe you could actually grow food, and these are locations that never grown food before, and now they are. And so we've got whole families in remote atolls growing food sustainably using local inputs, and some of these systems haven't been needed additional water for 26 weeks. Why? Because the roof water that we're capturing and storing inside our boxes keep these plants alive in between rainfall events. And so when the next rainfall event happens, then they top up and away they go again. So they're not dipping into their own drinking water supplies. And that's really a good thing. So in a little atoll, we take local resources, combine them in the right way, combine them with the right infrastructure, and you can be sustainable and close your nutrient loop. So we're showing how you can do that in a city car park. We've taken 2 city car parks in Port Melbourne, and in the last 6 months, we've grown enough vegetables for 2 adults. Now, a yearly recommended intake for an adult is 150 kilos. We've done that in each car park in 6 months. So we all know how big a car park is. It's 10 square metres. We've taken 2 of those and we've grown enough food for 2 adults in 6 months, which is pretty cool. So you can do it in very small spaces. We're reimagining how suburbs can be sustainable and set themselves up as sustainable closed loop systems, where we're taking captured water from roofs, generating electricity, growing food, integrating that with open space. You can certainly live around and live locally, change your food miles into food metres. Closing your nutrient loops at home, where we do exactly the same thing on a home scale. We're reimagining rooftops. One of the challenges in terms of design is in Australia our rooftops aren't designed typically for load, whereas in other places like in America they're designed for snowfall and snowpack, so they have a lot higher load rating. So to be able to grow food up on a roof with soil-based systems, you need a little bit of capacity in your roof. And we found one of those in opposite the convention centre on top of a car park called the Sidley Street Car Park, where we now have that building top level at our disposal. And we've just received notice of application has been granted for a permit to build a very large education centre, so that we can beam in environmental education. We can grow into our education centre here, and into event centre, have school kids come through learning. We can have also, we're going to be growing over 5 tonnes worth of urban food for the homeless and giving that out to charities like Second Bite and Oz Harvest in the city. So we're showing how we can capture stormwater, how we can reuse that water on site. We take nutrients from the South Melbourne market and we bring that up and mix it with into our growing systems that you can see just out here, and then we'll grow food in a very closed loop manner and feed the underprivileged of Melbourne and educate the world in terms of how you can do that almost anywhere. So in terms of opportunities, they're everywhere. They're everywhere you look to close your own loop and close city loops and close community loops and live in a circular economy. So let's work together and turn our cities into urban farms. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marc. If you can just stay with me, I have a follow-up question I'd like to ask. So tell us, how did you become so passionate about sustainable design?
Well, I grew up on a market farm where water and resources were very limited. I've got kids of my own, and look, within one generation, we're losing our ability to feed ourselves. We're all like this, and our growing area has changed. No one's got a 1,000 square metre block of land out there to have a garden out the back. So we're actually losing the ability to go and grow our own food. So getting into changing that and finding a way to make it easy for people has been a real priority for myself and our company, and we're proud to be doing something about that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Marc Noyce. Okay. Our next speaker is Jane Parker. Jane is best known for her work at Country Road and is presently the Head of Fashion and Costume Design at Design Art School, LCI Melbourne. The fashion industry is truly in Jane's blood. Jane worked alongside her brother, Stephen Bennett, at the iconic Australian lifestyle brand, Country Road. They taught Australia how to dress, and then they showed us how to make over our homes. As a brand custodian, Jane was responsible for the creation and maintenance of brand integrity, ensuring the brand stayed aspirational and relevant to their customers' lives. On top of all this, Jane has made significant contributions to the Australian design industry, including large-scale image creation and rebranding projects with a host of major Australian organisations. For her amazing efforts, Jane was inducted into the Design Institute of Australia in 1996. She is a consultant for eco-friendly denim brand Tricolour Federation, and this year Jane joined renowned design school LCI Melbourne as Head of Fashion and Costume Design. where sustainable design has been incorporated into the curriculum and delivery plan. On a personal note, I work for LCI Melbourne also. Whenever I've walked past Jane interacting with the students as a teacher, you know, people are always on their phones, that sort of thing. They stop whatever they're doing and they hang on every single last one of her words, and I can say that with conviction. So it's with great excitement that I introduce my esteemed colleague, Jane Parker.
Thank you, Peter. Which one is it? How do I change this? Yes, sorry. Sorry, good morning. No, I won't fiddle anymore. Really not good with technology. I'm more of a hands-on person. Well, just a bit of background to why I'm here today. Peter has sort of highlighted where I've been. I guess my journey's been always with sustainability. It actually didn't come front of mind until really, probably I was about 5 years old when I would help my grandmother, who was the most amazing seamstress, always try and work her patterns onto a bit of fabric that was never enough. To that she got the award of nickname of Scotchy, and I never knew her as anything other than Scotchy. But it was a great lesson at 5, and at the age of 9 I made my first dress. She made me unpick it, so I also learned another lesson about you have to make things with a bit of quality. The finish is as important as what it looks like on the hanger. So I actually had some pretty amazing mentors in my life going forward. But today I just would like to ask a question. If you get time after this, we'd like you to have a little browse through our installation. The Salvation Army have been absolutely so generous. They delivered 200 kilos of landfill, and we busily created, hopefully, a very disturbing space. So I'd like you to have a little look at it if you can, and have a little ponder at some little objects there that have been loved and possibly gone to landfill. So coming back to my issue about sustainability, I've been in this industry 45 years, so we were on the cusp of growing. We were a natural fibre brand. We probably made mistakes. We used a lot of wool, a lot of cotton, a lot of linen, which does take a lot of water. But in those days we worked with what we had, and we worked very hard at the quality and the aspect of sustainable product. In fact, it was so damn sustainable that our finance director and our partner would always say, Steve and Jane, really, it's too good. This will never wear out. And it doesn't. I'm still wearing my Country Road pants from 1980, and they still look good, by the way. It's style, not fashion. And my beautiful linen sheets that we did in our homeware brand have been there for a good 20-odd years, and they're as crisp and beautiful as they were the day I bought them. And when we moved a few months ago to a new home, I rushed out and bought some beautiful linen, bed linen for my home, and it's already wearing out, so I was horrified. So quality is about sustainability as well. So unfortunately, on a slightly negative side, our industry has really lost the plot. We're probably one of the most disgraceful parts of our industry. We haven't done enough. The business models that are out there today cannot really sustain a new path. But I see this as an absolute opportunity. It will flush out a lot of old businesses that won't run the ride of change. And I'm supporting a small business startup. It's completely environmentally sustainable. We're not 100%. Nobody can be 100%, but we are working in that ways. We started by researching raw materials. We wrote a business plan 5 years ago. 2 years ago, we went to the textile fairs in Paris. We researched right through probably 5,000 suppliers of fabrics to really come out with who in the world is taking on this challenge because all our raw materials had to be sustainable. So we found some fantastic mills, organic denim with some recycled polyester. The fabric is grown in Turkey. The fields are under the Anatolia Mountains. It's naturally irrigated, so they capture the water when the rain, just as Marc was saying. Their processes, the water usage, they do ozone bleaching, which is nothing. It's an environmental sustainable process, and to their credit, they've won the Nordic Swan Award, which is an award for sustainability globally. It's one of the most difficult awards to get. So we partnered up with that particular business, and we're working in a really conscious way. The labels are organic cotton. Anything we do, the business card is actually made out of recycled T-shirts. So he's taking a modern view about sustainable clothing for the future. And I'll get off that and get on to my topic, but I just wanted to say, this little cap here, it's made out of 5 recycled PET bottles. So the circular economy can happen if we stop producing more and start using what we have. This can be recycled. This won't biodegrade, by the way, but it's in our system. So rather than make more, recycle it, strip it down, make it into new products. There's so many products that can be made. So being a part of this terrible problem that we've created, I decided that it was time to give back. I went back to university, I got a teaching accreditation, and I joined this wonderful college in February of this year. It's a privately owned college, and I really wanted to work for this college because we can make changes. They're agile, they're really good businessmen, they know what they're doing, and this college is really going to blossom into a college of the future. We work in a beautiful building, which Kelly will talk about later. So we've got natural light, we've got natural materials around us, we've got all the right ingredients to actually be creative in. And so I'm working with my students. I'm working on all the aspects of the supply chain. So teaching them, rather than rushing up to Smith Street and buying something for $22 a metre or something, I'd much rather that we had a project. I'm working on getting them to buy, supporting them in looking at new materials. So rather than doing 20 garments in a semester, I'm saying 20 garments will cost you roughly, let's do 1 or 2, and you can afford that because you're not outlaying, so we can be really thoughtful about what we're starting to make, how we actually create the pattern, because I'm discussing, so if you want a flare, what's your fabric width, let's look at your estimate, because all these are sustainable processes in the way we need to manufacture garments. So really guiding them through the process of how to actually make a product fit for purpose, fit for market, desirable, but also affordable, and the good feel-good factor at the other end, it'll be a sustainable product that will go into the life cycle, into the circular economy, rather than into toxic landfill. Does anybody know how many tonnes of or kilos go into landfill every 20 seconds in Australia? Has anybody got any idea? Have you got an idea? Oh. I was going to ask you. Every 20 seconds, 200 kilos go into landfill in Australia. So that's pretty scary. So if you walk into that little room over there, you'll see discarded clothes that go into landfill. And a lot of those discarded clothes won't biodegrade. And that's making our soil toxic, which then poses a problem for our food and our environment. So it's not somebody else's problem. I think we all have to start to be more responsible. Growing food at home is a small step. thinking before you purchase is another step. It's quite a challenge. The industry hasn't recognised it yet. We're all talking about really small issues, but nobody really takes it on. So my goal is to build designers of the future, a sustainable future, a sustainable workplace in the clothing industry, and sustainable processes and creative ideas to really build a new age designer for Australia. The last 20 odd years, designers were replaced with product developers, and product developers would go overseas and buy somebody else's idea and bring it back. And so our industry has fallen apart. The concept of real design has really gone out the window. So I've got the opportunity of steering some wonderful students, and they're global students. I've got students from all over the world, which is fantastic, to really start to pose the question about sustainable living within product. So I found a couple of treasures on a positive note. In amongst the 200 kilos, I found this treasure. It's beautiful. And I thought, isn't that wonderful? Out of all this sadness comes an absolute joy. Now, this little garment has a story. It was crafted in England. It's obviously been worn by some beautiful little baby child. It's come out here, it's been worn. But the sad thing is somebody actually decided that it was no longer useful. And the salvos make it useful because they offer it to give it a new life, which is just a fantastic thing. Sorry, all these things are falling off. So I could stand here forever and chat, but I'm really excited about my reinvention of my career because I'm giving back. I've got a whole new challenge in my life to actually steer, with all my experience, is to steer a whole... I think I've got about 60 fashion students, which is pretty exciting, and it's a small college, but we're growing and we want 250 students next year, but we'll get there. But to give them all the right building blocks and foundations for a sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jane. And you spoke a bit about using recycled materials, particularly with your students. And I'd like to sort of ask, what sort of materials do you see coming to the fore these days in eco-friendly fashion?
Okay, good question, thank you. Well, when we were at the fairs, we went right through all the fabric suppliers. 90% of the fabric suppliers actually had sustainable cottons, denims. They had a whole lot of recycled polyesters, so they were going back into the community. There's fantastic developments happening in Germany where they're a byproduct of milk. We waste milk every day. 80, I don't know the stat, but tonnes and tonnes of milk go into waste every day. They're making absolutely so much out of the waste in Europe. They're starting to make, obviously, bottles, so they're biodegradable and almost edible out of the casein, which is a byproduct of milk. There's a fabric that a German company, I've forgotten the name, so it caught me off, but it's just like silk. So it's made out of byproduct of milk, so it's completely biodegradable, and it's beautiful. I've actually seen it, it's beautiful. It drapes, it's so essential. It's a beautiful, beautiful fibre. So there's some really good things happening out there. Packaging. Instead of packaging all our garments and over-packaging our garments when we send people out, either you're doing it online or you're doing it in the store. Foodworks are a good example. They've been using sugarcane pulp in their bags for quite a few years. There's so many materials that go into landfill or waste that can be reused. The sugarcane goes into the gardens and there's a great water retainer, I think, isn't it, Wayne?
Good mulch.
Good mulch. We're really lazy, and I think we've really lost the plot, but I'm pushing that let's have a love affair with waste rather than the war with waste. It's been a very negative campaign. I don't think it's really worked. And positive things that Wayne is showing, education is the key to actually getting the message across. It really is. So it's starting up in schools at young ages, and if I can grab the students at their late teens, I can give them the next energy to actually take it forward, to be ambassadors for the future rather than part of the problem. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Jane Parker, everyone. I think we were getting a bit of feedback in that spot. That should be a bit better. Is that okay? Thumbs up for okay? Thank you very much. Very eco-friendly. Okay, so thank you very much, Jane. That was amazing. Next, I'd like to introduce Wayne Rankin, who is the designer and co-founder of the Australian Graphic Design Association. With over 45 years of industry experience in branding and design and more than 15 years in interactive design, Wayne has participated in a diverse range of interactive projects both in Australia and overseas. In 1988, he co-founded the Australian Graphic Design Association, which aims to further the discussion about design and stimulate the creative progress of the industry. He is an organic gardener, activist, glass artist and printmaker. In 2007, Wayne founded Warrandyte Climate Action Now and served as president for 10 years. He has lived in Warrandyte for 41 years in a mud brick house that he designed and built in 1979, where he has implemented a range of sustainable practices. Please welcome Wayne Rankin.
Morning. I don't profess to be an expert at sustainability, but I've been trying to practice it for 41 years. But we all need to be in harmony with nature. And really, if you think about it, greed and wanting bigger and better is destroying our planet and having too many things. Like, I know people who've got 5 television sets, which is just ridiculous, you know. So, in 1976, I bought a bush block, and this, you can see here, the river goes right around, so I'm right on the Yarra River. And I designed a mud brick house and built a cardboard replica of it and held it up so that I could visualise what it was going to be like on the block. It's built out of a lot of recycled timbers, second-hand bricks, has no air conditioning, it's double glazed. I've got solar power and solar hot water, and next move for me is batteries to go off the grid. The other thing being there, this is a lot of my produce. I use biodynamic principles for my gardening, which puts microbes into the soil, and really most of our soil is just leached of any goodness at all because of past use of insecticides, etc. I do biodynamic composting as well, and I don't use any chemicals at all. My tennis court, turned it into a whole new energy area. I started with no dig, but after a while I discovered that really the big problem is water. I mean, I capture a lot of water, I'm on mains, but I don't use mains water for my vegetables because of the chlorine. But I moved, what have I done there? I moved to no dig to wicking beds. So I have 7 wicking beds now. Some of those are 4.8 metres by 1.2. And also all the wire framework and everything you see on the gardens is recycled from neighbours throwing things out. So I really try and recycle as much as possible. Oh, sorry, the wicking beds are made out of recycled cypress trees. So I'm recycling, some of the old trees, and you can get this from company in Gippsland. So the whole garden is an Indigenous garden. I've got 1.25 acres, which is quite a bit to look after. But being native, I mean, we don't have to water much, really. I mean, if the plants don't survive, we put in other Indigenous plants that really will. But it's a great space for local fauna. I've got copperhead snakes, tiger snakes. I've got wallabies, kangaroos, possums, still in Warrandyte, which is only 30 kilometres from Melbourne. And basically, people say, oh, you worry about the snakes. Well, sometimes I stand there and talk to them. I mean, snakes don't attack you unless you do something to them. And so really I try to live with the environment. Also, we have an amazing area down by the river where powerful owls nest and breed. And this is one of my photographs of one of the babies. I built a greenhouse or a hothouse and built out of recycled industrial windows. Neighbour next door was throwing these out, so I grabbed them and bought the solar material to put over the top. And also we make lots of possum boxes in the area to put around the peninsula for the possums. And I feed the possums every night, actually. My swimming pool was an in-ground steel wall pool, which I pulled out and I've turned it into a natural pond, and which is enjoyed by frogs, birds, snakes. The kookaburras are there every day. So, yeah. My wife founded the Osborne Peninsula Land Care Group 25 years ago, and it's got its own hothouse, and it propagates all local indigenous plants, and we give those away free to all the residents in the area. They've done a successful rabbit program. We've eradicated most of the rabbits. Our big problem at the moment is, and it's the whole of Victoria, is deer. They're devastating the bush in Warrandyte at the moment, and we were down planting on the weekend, and a lot of the things we planted, over the last few years have been absolutely destroyed. In 2007, I started the idea of a climate action group. One of my neighbours down the road was involved in beyond zero emissions, and so we called a public forum in Warrandyte, and we got over probably about 120 people. From that, we started a committee, and we held, over the years, we had 3 sustainability forums, expos, and a lot of forums in the evening, which are free to the public. This is some of our marching. We've done that in the city and in Warrandyte as well. Really trying to bring forward the whole idea of we need to be more sustainable, and also telling people about the effects of climate change. We also got involved probably 4 years ago with the Uniting Church in Warrandyte, and we do a recycling program twice a year. And it's anything from bras to bikes to CDs, televisions, and a lot of the material goes over to Africa, the bikes and the bras and things like that. So, yeah. So what the future holds, we are on a projection of runaway temperatures which could reach 3 to 4 degrees centigrade. A 20% plus average increase creates summer extremes of peak temperature of 48 to 52 degrees, which if prolonged could turn Australia into a plantless desert like the Middle East. Plants cannot survive temperatures over 40 degrees centigrade for prolonged periods. So planting trees is an ultimate renewal strategy. Dr. Thomas Crowther is an ecologist and chief scientific advisor to the UN's Trillion Tree campaign, says our tree numbers are estimated to be about 400 trees per person alive today. He also has great hope that if we plant another 1.2 trillion trees, another 160 trees per person, we can bring down to Earth 10 years of carbon polluting gases. Even more encouraging is the fact that there is space to plant these trees without interfering with existing farmland, parks, woods and forests. Trees purify our water, they purify the air, and they modify pollution. And they create soils for other living things to grow, protecting biodiversity. And David Suzuki, who I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, says that there are some things in the world we can't change: gravity, entropy, and the speed of light, and our biological nature that requires clean air, clean water, clean soil, clean energy and biodiversity for our health and well-being. Protecting the biosphere should be our highest priority. Other things like capitalism, free enterprise, the economy, currency, the market are not forces of nature, we invented them. and we can change them. And it makes no sense to elevate economics over the biosphere. All of us can make a difference. Use your voice, use your devices, your lifestyle choices, or your time and talents. The collective action adds up to urgently needed social change, and that's what is needed. And finally, I think this statement from David as well, we are nature, all people and all species. We are interconnected with nature and with each other. What we do to the planet and its living creatures, we do to ourselves. Self-infliction. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Wayne. And I think I saw a few eyebrows go up when they heard about the copperhead, the snakes and that sort of thing, right? So I do have a question just to follow up from that. You talked a bit about your work with Warrandyte Climate Action Now, and I just wanted to ask, environmental activism and design are both significant concepts. Can you tell us a bit about the intersection between the two?
Well, basically it's the, I think it's the power of design, like not just graphic design like I do, but it's really to communicate and to create new ways of thinking and doing things. And I think that it intersects really nicely because we have to create that social change and environmental change to really save the planet, I think.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope that's going to work. Okay. Next, I'd like to invite Brigitte Heller. Brigitte is a sculptor and artist. She's Swiss-born Brigitte is an award-winning artist. Her catalogue of awards includes the National Gallery of Victoria Trustees Award, the World Sculpture News Prize, the Toorak Place Award, Moonee Valley Art Cycle Award, and was highly commended for the Nillumbik Art Award. She has been the subject of several publications and is widely exhibited, having held several group and solo exhibitions around Australia, and is often commissioned by clients such as the City of Ballarat and Wyndham City Council. Brigitte's practice is informed and formed by her exploration of materials, being constantly inspired by what she sees, collects, finds and sources. Nature has always been at the forefront of Brigitte's works, where she explores the everyday forms that surround us and through the use of materials, colour and technique. So please welcome Brigitte.
Thank you. Now, artists have always been inspired by the beauty and mystery of nature, of course, and have used elements of the natural world in creative ways for centuries. In recent time, however, there has been a growing tendency in contemporary art to consider the natural world not only as a source for inspiration or subject to represent, but also as a realm to influence people directly. I have approached the topic of nature from many different levels, starting off, I'm not sure if we have a problem here, starting off with treading really lightly within a landscape. Coming from Switzerland, I first travelled to New Zealand, and travelling and visiting places was a way for me to explore a new landscape and to leave a mark that is not necessarily there permanently. Those two works here are literally taking or created on the spur of a moment. The top work is a drawing in the sand. It's just a continuous line that I have created and that really now only exists as a photograph. It disappeared as the tide came up. The other work is a rock installation on One Tree Hill. It's inside a volcanic cone, and the rocks are used by many people to draw messages, to just create their own visions, and I, with the help of many other visitors, created this work over 2 days. When I first came to Australia, I had never planted a tree, and I was invited to envisage a new future for a landscape in Chewton in central Victoria. The land was infested by weeds, by blackberries, and I thought, wouldn't it be fantastic if I start my share of planting trees? So this installation consists of 400 wattle trees, and the center of this installation is a variety of seeds that are created with slate that I found on this land. Now, not all of the works that I create are always created on sites. I am definitely inspired by materials that I find and that grow around me. The work on A Time of Healing that I created at Mount Macedon was done after a bushfire had raged through this environment, and the landscape was in quite a dire state. I collected some of the burned wood and created this installation on private property. It was a combination of showing devastation, but also the beauty that can come out of that devastation. And it really provided a talking point to people that were affected by the bushfire, and that's sort of an ongoing theme within the environment I am working. The bottom work, Prophecy, is created of willow, which is quite an ephemeral material. Willow here in Australia is considered a weed, and most people are more than happy for me to go out and cut off as much as I possibly can. I love working with willow. I love the act of weaving, and in the process I create quite large structure. Those works, although they are large and, provide an experience, they are quite ephemeral. Weather usually gets to the works and they disintegrate within about a year or two. As part of my travels, I am always interested in little sort of more subdued objects of the environment. When I went camping, we used sort of canned or tinned food occasionally, and we were left with all those little tins. So what I started doing is I collected natural materials around me and refilled those little tins until I had a whole collection of those tins that all reminded me of a certain place or a certain journey that I have been on. There are more willow works that can be quite transportable. So after a few more substantial outdoor installation, I also wanted to bring some of the materials that I found outdoors into the gallery space. It really changes your perception of a material if you take the outside into an inside environment, and people look at it and experience it quite differently. And obviously also the lifespan is extended considerably. I quite often just walk. I live in central Victoria on 30 acres, so quite often I just walk outside the door and try to use whatever grows around me. This work here is created with straw or with grass that after a really long and dry summer just stands on the side of the road. So I can be seen quite often scrambling around the bush or on the roadsides or along creeks. The collecting of materials is a really important part of what I'm doing, and this is also how I form the relationship with the materials that I use. Those works here are much smaller. Sometimes it makes what I do more accessible to people, and it can be viewed in a more intimate space. Materials here are air roots of the Moreton Bay fig tree. The one on the right is literally the stems of leaves that I found. and weeping willow that I have created into a little basket. I'm also really interested in how we engage with the materials that we use on a daily basis. I looked at tools that I use in the studio, that I use for gardening, looked at the origin of those tools. They are made of wood, but if I hold a garden fork, for example, I don't really think of the tree. Same if I sit on a wooden chair. It is a wooden chair, it comes from the tree, but we sort of have almost lost that kind of relationship. And those works really put a bit of emphasis back on the origins. This here is part of a work that I have created with students, where we look at our relationship with the natural world and how it impacts on our daily lives. It really is a similar idea to how we can grow food again much closer to where we live. So I envisaged of having tables where we eat, where we would actually grow the herbs that we use to flavor our food directly at the table and be able to harvest just as we need those resources. And again, looking at all the materials that we surround ourselves with. Sometimes when I'm really lucky, I am invited to work within a certain environment and do a residency, an artisan residency, which I did here at the Tulangi Forest. This was a big project where 40 artists all engaged with the forest, and we each basically took a material that was already there and reimagined the landscape and how natural objects sit within the landscape for people to appreciate it in a different way. Now, working with ephemeral materials is, it creates an awareness that it is not going to live forever. And I also live in an environment that is prone to bushfires. So for me, it is almost a natural progression that some of my works, when they come to the end of their lifespan, they disappear. They either fall onto the ground, go back into the soil, or they burn. And there is beauty in that as well, in the fire. As part of my arts practice, I also use non-organic recycled materials. I'm really interested in what an object that has been used before, how it talks to me. Those garments here are made of branches, but I also used old fly wire, copper fly wire. I used copper wire that I have stripped myself, taken out of old cables. The wooden bits are old bits of a piano. So I'm very much inspired by what I see around me and by the story that those objects tell me. Those garments can't be worn. They are not very comfortable, as you might be able to imagine. So it is more the suggestion of a body that might be present inside. There's some more copper wire works that do really reflect also on place, the round rocks I found during long walks along beaches, and it creates sort of a dance between the different materials and experiences. Now, as part of a sustainable arts practice, I also had to deal with the dilemma of using materials that last longer than just using ephemeral materials, particularly engaging with public artworks. I had to find solutions that I could create works that would last more than 10 years, as is the requirement often with public artworks. So I started to use wire, old rusty wire that has been used in farming and often is, you know, basically left in a pile for to be recycled, to be melted down again. Now, this one is one of my latest works that I created for the Lawn Sculpture Biennale, Paradiso Perduto. It does look or envisages a different new environment where if there's no more trees, if there's nothing growing, can we replicate a natural environment through a man-made structure? Can we imitate nature? Now, I feel that as an artist, I am not well qualified to give answers. I'm not even very good at creating solutions. I really would like people to engage with my work and experience what it could be like, and maybe for some people it will create or recreate a connection with a memory of being in a natural environment and going back to nature. Another really important aspect of my work is me as an educator. I am also a tutor at LCI. I teach young people. I teach visual arts, and sustainable arts practice is a big topic in what we do, that we don't always have to run to the next art shop and buy brand new materials. Working with cardboard, working with recycle materials, going to the op shop, finding materials there is a really important aspect in what I'm doing. I'm also doing workshops for the Australian Association for Adventure Bush Therapy, where actually I take people out into the environment and we create artworks as a group. So for me now, education is a really important aspect of bringing my ideas across and creating sustainable artists of the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think looking out in the crowd, and a few of you had some really big smiles on your faces when you got to view some of Brigitte's work. And as a contemporary art lover and installation art lover, I'm definitely fanboying out here. So I'll ask the question that's on everyone's lips. And I will actually give you an opportunity later on to interact with our panel as well. So Brigitte, I'd love to know, what is it about working with recycled materials that draws you to them?
I think, as I mentioned before, same with natural material, is actually the finding of things. For me, going around and foraging, or even just if I use copper wire as one of an example, actually cutting the wire open or cutting the plastic away and then finding what kind of wire is inside, it's such a surprise. Or taking a piano apart that someone didn't want to use anymore and investigating what is inside, how does it work, how can I use that. So I'm a very visual person. I am so inspired by what I see around me.
Thank you very much, Brigitte. And Dankeschön. My accent's terrible, I'm sorry. All right. Last up we have our big finish. No pressure. Next I'd like to introduce Kelly Wellington. So Kelly's an architect and senior associate at Grey Puxent. Kelly has over 20 years of architectural experience, having worked in Australia and abroad across a broad range of commercial and educational projects. She has worked on notable projects including the Building the Education Revolution program's Lightning Reef Primary School and Early Learning Centre in Bendigo, and the conversion of the heritage listed Foy and Gibson building in Collingwood into the impressive LCI Melbourne Design Arts Campus, where some of us work. Sponsored by LCI. And also the refurbishment of the Yarra Valley water offices. So I'd like to welcome Kelly Wellington.
Thank you. It's an amazing group of speakers to follow, so hopefully I can hold my own. Grey Pakistan is a national architecture and interior design practice. We have offices in Sydney and Brisbane with our headquarters here in Melbourne. As an architect, I could talk about sustainability in relation to the built form. The built form is central to almost all components of circular economy. The use of sustainable materials, reduction of waste, energy consumption, long-lasting design, almost all parts of it relate to our architecture and built form in some way. But these are all topics well explored and should be considered in all architectural design. I don't think they should be a separate thing from any design process. However, I wanted to come to you from a different point of view today. I would like to explore how the design of learning spaces can contribute to the evolution of sustainability in future and for future generations. We're not going to overcome the challenges of sustainability as individuals. I believe it'll take the collaboration of creative thinkers to advance innovation and innovation to develop a sustainable future. There are some examples of some collaborative learning spaces. The learning environment today is evolving. It doesn't look like it used to be. I definitely didn't go to school in a place that looked like that. The learning environment must nurture and encourage this collaboration, create a space that takes us out of our silos and also allows cross-pollination between disciplines. It is this learning environment and progression into the future workspace that will allow the next generations of creative thinkers to ensure a sustainable future. Today I'll show you some examples of how Grey Pakistan has created a learning environment for LCI's Melbourne campus at 150 Oxford Street that attempts to foster this crucial collaboration that's needed for sustainability. This was an adaptive reuse project. It was the conversion of the once woolen textile factory of the Foy & Gibson Company into a dedicated design school. The red brick factories and warehouses were built over the decades of the late 1800s, spanning multiple blocks in Collingwood. So the last picture, you can see the textile ladies sewing within the space. And then the old looms, you can see the sawtooth roof and the natural light that could come into the space. The brief for the project was to transform the 130-year-old heritage building into a creative campus for students in one of the 6 disciplines: communication design, film and photography, fashion and costume design, interior design, graphic and digital, visual arts, all of which were part of the Bachelor of Design for the school. To provide purpose-built design spaces to allow the delivery of specialty courses and to be adaptable for the evolving needs of a changing curriculum. Creativity and collaboration were the driving factors for the campus, with every aspect of the design to inspire students and encourage the cross-disciplinary design. So the existing building here consisted of 2, have I got a pointer? No? Oh, anyway, as you can see on the right, the red button, thank you. This side here and this side here were 2 parts of the Foy & Gibson building. As I said, the street was built in stages over a number of years. They were separated by a 600 mil thick brick wall. And so where the blue is here, we created a big opening in the wall. During the transformation, a large section of the wall was removed to allow the space to become one. The bricks were used throughout the campus to repair dilapidated brickwork and to infill openings that were created that were no longer required. A section of the level 2 floor was removed to create the central atrium void that allows the visual connection between the gallery space in the bottom here up to student breakout area on level 2. From all locations, you can look across and see activity and display and making of design. The visual connection is extremely important for the success of vertical education campus and cross-pollinations of students across all design disciplines, enabling collaboration and encouraging innovation. So you can see here the final outcome has connecting from the gallery. You have tiered seating and stairs connecting the spaces to an atrium space in the central. There are windows from different rooms across to different spaces from all areas. You can see students' work and things happening. Right, so this is the entry as you come into the building. The existing floorboards were removed to create the atrium space were reused and to create this entry feature wall and the planting in between the timber pieces. So these were the timber beams and floorboards that were taken out to create that space. The tiered seating here, the broad tiered seating joins each of the levels and allows for informal collaboration and presentations. There's a large projector screen opposite this tiered seating that can display what's happening in the gallery or content for classes. So each area intersects and there is opportunity for collaboration at each step of the way, with tiered seating connecting the levels. The student breakout areas at the top right there is adjacent the void means that all parts of the building are activated, helping to encourage productivity and community amongst the students. The gallery, located in the basement, is visible from the street and through the glass balustrades at the entry level, enticing people to investigate what is below. The common areas throughout act as a campus for the students. There are hanging rails for display of work, large areas of blackboard paint for free expression. Central to the studios are rooms of various sizes housing small group spaces, meeting rooms and the library. The spaces in between actual studio rooms are just as important to education and to foster that collaboration. The area is surrounded in the central there as what we call the pod wall, is various size plywood boxes allowing display of student work. Some of them are big enough for a fashion garment on a mannequin to be displayed. Some of them have headphone jacks where you can plug in and listen to some student work that's been created. There's TV screens and different lit boxes, some window seats, and so you can use this installation of a built form in different ways to express and collaborate within the space. All of these contribute to the feel that the space belongs to the student and they are encouraged to adapt and change them. So as an architect, you have a envisage how someone might use the space that you've designed for them. And I have to say, I've been completely humbled by how LCI used the space. You know, it's, I think, a testimony that what we've created for them is that is adaptable and has allowed them to use it in ways that I couldn't think were imaginable. We imagined there would be runway shows on the gallery, and in the first runway show they went up the stairs and around and back down again, and to be able to see someone using a building and being able to change it and do whatever they want within the space and it be adaptable to allow that is really rewarding. So in closing, learning and that collaboration between our students and creating spaces that allow that to happen is going to foster the sustainability that the design and sustainability that we need moving forward and innovation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Speaking of which, I was at that fashion show and seeing the models traipse up and down those stairs in 6-inch heels. Good luck to them. I've only seen like scarier feats on Drag Race, if anyone's a fan. Yeah, there we go. Speaking of, actually, you showed us the image of the internal facade with the wooden, the reclaimed wood, and actually, it is absolutely gorgeous if you ever look at it up close. Was the incorporation of the recycled materials intentional in the design execution?
Throughout the whole design, as I said, I could talk about the sustainability of the built form. We did things such as insulating the walls, putting a roof with insulation in it to increase or reduce the energy reduce energy usage within the building. The trying to reuse any of the materials throughout the building to repair or to change the building as we needed it to. I think the most important thing with recycling is finding value. And if you talk about the previous speakers that I had, old clothes, old buildings, artwork, old natural material, discarded materials, finding value in those things means that people are going to are going to want to use them more because there's a value to them. So yes, finding we didn't throw any of the timber out that was taken out of the building. It was all reused throughout the project. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I'd now like to invite all of our panel members to come and join us on the panel. All right. So I will be giving you all an opportunity to pose some questions of the panel. I can see some people burning to do so, but I'm going to steal the first honour by proposing the first question, which is, what does sustainable design mean to you? Yeah. So any volunteers who's going to be brave? Let me see if I can get this mic up. Let me pass this one to you. Oh, I think I can... Nope. AV people, come on. Okay, let's start with this up here. I'll pop this one over to the two of you. Okay, you can go first. Start with...
Yep. Hello. Okay. As I tried to touch on before, I think sustainable design should just be incorporated in everything. It shouldn't be something that's a buzzword that's separate from our design process. In every part of your design process, it should be looking at how is that material, where did it come from, what embodied energy was used to make that material. Do we need to build a new building? Look at the building we're in. There's value in older objects. Just because someone else might have discarded it and it's no longer used for that purpose, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have value. So finding value in all of our older things, whether it's a garment or a natural material that's a found material, there's always finding that value is going to make something more sustainable.
I actually look at it from two different aspects. The materials, as you said, Kelly, and where things come from and if it's sustainable. But I also look at it for myself as an artist and as a designer, how I can actually sustain my own arts practice by allowing myself the time to actually create design and also looking after myself so I stay healthy, so I can continue to produce. And for me, those two things really play into each other.
As far as I'm concerned, we really have to look at reusing things on this planet because it's, at the moment, the way we're going, we're not heading in a really good direction. And really, from my point of view, I think why not reuse things that we can, that don't impinge on the environment and also really don't use energy, again, to reproduce things. And so from that point of view, I think I just, again, I bring back that whole thing about we have to be more in tune with nature and really not keep wanting the biggest and the best. Thank you.
Right. It's a very deep subject, very deep. I think we have to tackle it from every angle. We've looked at the circular economy. I think we've got to be really conscious ourselves about waste in our own life and practices. We talk about, we're in the fashion industry, it's the fast fashion is a part of the landscape today, and I think a lot of us in this room, and I won't look at anybody, have bought fast fashion because they've got to the crunch. Maybe it's Saturday night, they want to go out, something new, something quick, they want to look good, want to impress somebody, whip into Zara or H&M and get something for $14. I saw an ad in the paper last Saturday and it said, it was Kmart, and it said, wow, $2 T-shirts, come buy 10. I nearly made me sick, actually. But I'm conscious about the environment. I was brought up to be conscious about the environment. Many of our young children today have really don't know where peas come from. They come from the supermarket in a bag. Where does the meat come from? Oh, it comes from the supermarket. It's in a container. We have to become educators in our own right and teach our young people about sustainability. And I think that it's I could talk for hours. I must hand it over. So sustainability for me is being very conscious about waste and how could we reduce that waste as ground zero for us as individuals.
In our company we're taking a different, a very similar view. We've also would add that we also need to make sustainability profitable and commercial, because there's no point trying to get a product that's sustainable and costs 3 times as much. So we've spent a lot of time grappling with this very issue, and what we've come up with was grabbing chip packet film that was going to landfill and using that as a source material to make our food cube system, which can then be rechipped and remade again and again and again forever. Okay, so because we're injection moulding it, we've changed our manufacturing process. We can make that in 5 minutes with a big tool. We've paid a big investment so we can make it here in Melbourne very quickly, so we can actually cost compete with China with our product that's made here in Melbourne from a waste stream food grade source. So we spent a lot of time thinking about how can we compete on a world stage with something that is sustainable and that is can become part of the circular economy. If I ever see one of our products on the side of a road in hard rubbish collection, I will physically pull over and grab it and get it back and reuse it.
That's great.
That was amazing, and it's funny to think you've got Marc by the side of the road picking up his products and Brigitte by the side of the road collecting resources for artwork. So there's a theme here. Other 3? No? Okay. Yeah, no? Oh, okay. Side of the road? No, okay. In a rubbish bag. Wow. All right, so I'd like to invite our audience members if anyone's got a burning question. Yes, okay. I don't know if this microphone will reach there, so shout. Yep.
My question is for Marc from Biofilta. Also, the products you've got there, some really good initiatives. What role do you see in the future your products can play with the New South Wales and Queensland drought-stricken farmers and communities there?
Cool. Did everyone hear that? Is that okay? Would you like me to repeat? Just about Marc's products at Biofilta, about what role they might play in drought-stricken areas like in New South Wales and Queensland. Yeah.
That's a really good question. It's actually come up before. We are not going to displace broad acre farming. We're not going to displace the need for large market gardens on the fringes of our cities. What we are going to help with is a lot of our personal and communities produce, such as the high value herbs, for example. You know, paying $35 a kilo for rosemary is a disgrace. to be honest, because I've got a plant in my backyard that's worth about $500, I reckon. And I share that with my neighbours, and you know I grow things and that are really high value in a small space, and I don't have to go to the supermarket to buy that because there's just no need. So I avoid all that. So we're going to be able to do that on probably the scale between DIY, you know, a little plant pot in your backyard, and commercial. So we're in this space in between where you can actually live pretty much sustainable with our products. It's semi-commercial. It would give a payback within 2 years to grow your own food in our systems. Will it feed the whole world? No, because you need a physical amount of space. Yeah. And there's another level with all the hydroponics and things like that, which are high energy intensive, and you know, you need a degree to, you know, and you really need to know what you're doing to make those things work, and certainly commercially. So we're in this space between broadacre agriculture and the next level up being sustainable at home and as a community.
Excellent. Yeah, certainly. Kelly, go ahead. I was just about to say sorry for being on my phone.
Not quite answering your question about New South Wales, but in terms of the gardens, another initiative that we're doing within commercial buildings within the city is to put vegetable gardens on the roof, which are a breakout space for staff. So, you know, creating that well-being feeling as well, giving them somewhere to share on a lunchtime, go up to the rooftop and grow your own veggies, and people share them and take them home. So it's a really good product to use for that purpose as well.
Excellent, thank you. I was just about to say, I was texting my mum, go and, you know, start packaging the rosemary in the backyard. I've got, was it 35 a kilo, whatever it was? Yeah. Let's go. Other questions from the audience? Don't be shy. Yes?
One of your last points about making sustainability profitable, how do you think you can prevent it becoming like a new sales
Sure. So just about that, it was about how to prevent sustainability becoming gimmicky or a selling thing, yeah? Okay.
Go find a better product and use it and grow food with it. If you do that, you've got a product there that you're happy to buy, you're happy to have, and you're happy to get more of when you realise we're not trying to, you know, we think that you can have a sustainable product, you can get it at a price point that is acceptable, and you look at the quality and it's going to be there for the next 10 years. It's not going to be out on your hard rubbish in 6 months' time when we get belted with a heat wave and things dry out or it cracks, or, you know, it doesn't work like it looks like on the pretty picture on the box. In fact, our products don't even come in a box. They are the box.
From a building point of view, sorry, Jane. From a building point of view, the education of people coming up, the next generation should know that it's not acceptable to have a building that hasn't considered environmental sustainability. And when you've got a generation of people that don't accept it, then it's going to become we have to do this. And when you've got more people that have value in that, then it's going to be cheaper to do because of scales of economy.
From my point of view, what's happening out there with the real innovators in textiles is they're actually making things actually more comfortable. So it's not only environmentally sustainable, the products and the fabrics that are being developed, they've actually got reformed stretch technology in them, and so there's a whole lot of innovation happening behind there. So actually when you might buy the garment, it might at this point, instead of a $90 jean, be a $200 jean, but its life cycle will be 5 times the time of your $100 jean. And if you do the math, you will find that you've got a product that's sustainable in your wardrobe, but also the comfort factor. So as designers, and we're all designers, what we look for is what's happening in our society, how are we living, what do we need in our society that are going to make our lives more comfortable. The last 100 years we've taken the Industrial Revolution as, you know, it's helped us. We've done great things, but nobody actually looked at the bigger picture of what the outcome of Industrial Revolution would do to our beautiful environment. Designers of today are thinking a lot more broadly. We're up in the clouds looking down rather than sitting in the mess and trying to fight our way out. And I think that's our skills, and that's what we want to bring to students of the future and educate them to be their next tier of ambassadors going forward. I think I get a bit preachy sometimes. I'll be quiet.
I believe that there's no doubt that the term is abused at the moment on many levels, and we as consumers just have to really inform ourselves and not just jump on the first headline and go with it just because something is called sustainable doesn't mean that it is. And I also believe to a certain extent sometimes if it's too cheap, it's just too good to be true. So price often is an indication.
Just on another issue about the broad acre, I don't know whether you probably don't watch Landline, but I was watching it on Sunday, and it was a farmer in Queensland who farms bananas, and he was having real problems with his property. It's taken him 4 to 5 years to turn it around, and what he's done is he doesn't use any insecticides, no sprays, nothing. All the grass is up to here. They walk through it, drive through it, and he's got insect populations that protect against the bad insects. He's got microbes happening in the soil, and he's now found a huge market in Japan and overseas for his bananas. So, you know, farmers, and even I mentioned about my biodynamics, what I do, I've noticed a big difference in the growth of not just fruit and vegetables, but also even native plants. And I think that the big problem is most of our soil has been leached of any goodness. And the thing is, if we can improve that, and a lot of farmers are turning to biodynamics on a big scale, and I think that's an important issue because it holds and retains the moisture levels in the soil as well.
Fantastic innovations. Other questions? Yeah, sure, go for it. Did everyone catch that? Yeah, okay, sure.
A good question. I think you've got to be more conscious about fabrics as a consumer. I mean, polyester doesn't breathe that well, and polyester's cheap. Rayon is a much more sustainable, it's a cellulose fibre. I think you've got to, somebody mentioned, you've just got to be more inquiring about what you're actually purchasing. Ask your salesperson if probably they won't know because we've lost the art of retail in all that as well, no knowledge. I think you've just got to be more inquiring. There are beautiful fabrics out there, but you've just got to, I think, be a little bit more self-aware. Difficult. I think we live in a pretty... The way we dress today is really we dress in layers, and I think that's probably the modern way to dress. You know, your bookends are I think your little singlet at that one end and your puffer at the other end, your puffer jacket. But how many puffer jackets are out there? What's inside them? It's polyfill. Polyfill is not a good fibre. You know, you can actually fill your puffer jackets with the excess of all the silk worms, all the excess of silk that comes off the looms. There's a whole new industry starting now where looking at waste and how we can be more sustainable with it, because everybody probably in the world now owns a puffer jacket from Uniqlo or somewhere, and it's full of polyfill, which is pretty bad. And we don't know what all these fabrics are doing to us either. All these these little tiny little minuscule things are coming off. We don't really know what they're doing to us. Our food, all this forced food, we don't know what that's doing. When you eat a biodynamic produce, it actually tastes so much better. So much better. Yes, I'll shut up.
No, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you.
Oh, that's quite all right.
But interesting, the owner of Digger Seeds did a presentation recent that I was at, and he said that we are eating food that has 20% of the nutritional density that our grandparents ate, because it sat in soil for a lot longer. It didn't have growth hormones. It just sat there and sucked up nutrients, and it was really great food. So if you think some of your supermarket food tastes a bit bland, grow your own and see the difference. It's really quite incredible.
Tomatoes are a really good example.
Yeah, they actually have taste.
Yeah, they do.
They're not like
Beautiful.
bricks.
So,
They've got that sweetness and that beautiful pop when you put it in your mouth. It's not that hard. We just got to be a little bit more self-aware, I think.
I would like to lead this into another question, actually.
Sure, please.
I really have been wondering for a while now if being sustainable is something for wealthier people or the really poor people, because buying a garment that is of really high quality or buying food that is of really good quality costs a lot of money, and average person very often thinks that it's just not feasible to live that kind of a lifestyle. Same with architecture. I've sort of wondered whether sustainable architecture is affordable for everyone. So it's a question, not really an answer.
yes, it is.
Okay.
I'd say yes. It is affordable because if you build a 6-star energy rated home, which is what we should be building today, and not double glazed but triple glazed, that if you put blinds in, yes, the upfront cost is expensive, but the living cost and the lifestyle, the life of that, you're not paying those $800 electricity bills every 4 months or so. It's that, I guess, 20-year give back rather than the instant. We live in an instant coffee society. Everybody wants everything now. They want it cheap, they want it fast, they want it just on stream. I spoke to one of my students the other day and she was so tired. I said, "Why are you always tired? What do you eat?" She said, "Uber." I said, "Oh, interesting, Uber. Is that now food?"
From a sustainability architecture point of view, I work on mainly commercial and education buildings, which are big, and there's a budget there, and you put these initiatives in place, so the running cost of the building is cheaper. So that's a starting point. But from an economy point of view, or from someone with a smaller budget, passive solar or passive sustainability design, what orientation is your building, what layout are our streets, where do you have the windows on your house, all of that stuff is not a cost. If you've got a house, the things, good design principles that should be just part of the design, that don't cost money.
We've one of our business partners, actually my co-director, he is a director of a sustainable housing estate called The Cape, and down in Cape Patterson, and they've got 8 and 10-star housing going on down there. So they have zero bills. In fact, the houses actually give you a little $200 to $300 credit on your energy account every year, and so it's positive living in terms of electricity costs. They've taken out all fossil fuels, no gas, everything's run off electric, and the houses are actually giving money back to the owners down there. So I think there's, and if you remember that pop-up farm that I showed you in Port Melbourne that's going there right now, it has a 37% return on investment. Yeah, that's a lot more times better than putting money on a mortgage. If I said to you, I've got some shares, a share here to invest in, you'll get a 37% return, Jane. What would you think of that? You think, go give me some of that. Well, grow your own food and you can get exactly that. It's really that simple.
I think the other thing is with regard to food, I mean, there's a lot of community gardens that people can join. We have one in Warrandyte, which I don't need because I'm growing my own, but a lot of people do get involved. And, you know, so you don't necessarily have to have a lot of money to buy food if you're prepared to put in and grow some. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, and I think we have time for one more question. Perhaps, yeah, over here.
My question is fashion related. So apart from voting with our dollars, what else can we do as consumers and activists to pressure on the industry to make significant changes for more consumers to be more informed and make better decisions?
Yeah, as simple as that. Don't buy their products.
What else can we do, for example, say a clear indication of what's in the fibers or other things that we can
Yeah. Look, in my when we started Country Road, you actually had to put everything in the garment. You had to put all the information in. Somehow, over the years, it's a bit they've lost the plot a little bit. But it's I totally agree. It has to be very clearly communicated, like food has to be in garments. But I think the simple solution is stop buying. Buy better, buy less. I stand on Thursday morning and look up at our street and I see what the waste rubbish bins in our street. It makes me feel ill, what people are consuming and just chucking out, you know. There's these fantastic little compost things you can put in your garden that are actually not big, and you can create all this wonderful soil. Your herb garden. I'm off fashion, but I'm a bit off fashion, I have to say. I'm a style queen.
There is one other thing that people can do as a consumer, and that is to lobby your industry, for them to lobby the government and to change policy about what is actually imported, okay, and what types of fibres and what types of materials are acceptable, and put a tax on it. You know, those sort of trade level discussions we can put to the industry that looks after these issues, and let them lobby the government.
Also, natural materials can be composted as well. So a lot of people don't think about that, but you can.
Okay. I think that might be all the time we have. I'm so sorry. I saw the hand go up. I'm like, no. So please put your hand together for our esteemed panel. Marc Noyce, Jane Parker, keep it clapping. Wayne Rankin, Brigitte Heller, and Kelly Wellington. Thank you, panel.